My 32/MXGF23/F moved on just 10 days after our 5-year relationship ended. Can I get advice? LONG, I know that I'm not going to hear what I'd like to hear here, but I just need somewhere to discuss this because I just can't do it with my friends anymore. Backstory: we first met at my job when she was in college studying for a similar field that I graduated college for, so we sort of hit it off really quickly. She had a boyfriend at the time, so we got to know each other with no intent of dating because I respected the fact that she was in a relationship and also because I felt extremely weird about the age gap. We would hang out from time to time and she'd mention something flirty and I'd always say something reminding her that she had a boyfriend, to which she'd then vent about how unhappy she was with him and mention that she can't get out of the relationship because he gets down when she tries. She'd eventually break it off with him and we'd stay up together for hours, having deep talks and watching the sunrise every other morning. Everything started off great. I fell for her pretty quickly around this time. She had a bad history for self-harm and had put herself into the hospital for cutting herself too deeply. She was checked in for mental health and it was a few days before I knew what was going on. We texted frequently, so when it stopped out of nowhere I thought that it was weird but mostly assumed it had something to do with respecting her boyfriend. I was there for her despite that and was willing to provide help and support where I could. I was excited to take her to a concert that I'd been looking forward to attending, and after having gone to this show I felt that I was alone for the duration of it because she'd always be stepping away to talk to a group of guys that are hanging out behind the venue, or exchanging snaps with the guys running the merch booths. I felt that when the bands I was looking forward to went on stage she was nowhere to be found and I'd have to take time looking for her so that I could share the experience with her. I tried to shrug this off as it's a new relationship and I'm building trust with someone new. Not long after she started college, roughly 2 to 3 months in, I had just gotten my own place again and she decided she was going to spend the night at my place and I'd just run her to classes in the morning so that we could spend the night together. It was around this time that we got into our first major fight because after a night of romantic loving, she received a text from a guy on campus saying something along the lines of "Thanks for being there for me the other night, I had a great time." Which obviously raised a lot of concern and questions, because at this point, we were only together for about 2 or 3 months officially. I asked her about it, heard what sounded like the worst excuse in the world, and her first reaction was to delete the text from him because I thought it would help because it bothered you. Except now it bothered me worse because I can't reread it. At this point in time, I was dead set on taking her to class, dropping her off, and never seeing her again. This was when she started fighting for me. Begging for me back, not wanting me to leave, frequently explaining that it was a misunderstanding, etc. She dropped her classes for the day because of this argument before I reassured her that we could talk about it later and she needs to focus on the remainder of her classes for the day. We talked things out and I decide again to believe what she's telling me because there is never any clear evidence that something ever did happen and I want to trust her, so I decide not to think the worst. She mentioned early on in our relationship that she has a lot of childhood trauma, which I know is true because of her family. However, there are additional hazy details involved in this as well. She had a habit of making stories up for attention or just outright lying about things, such as being RIPD before we even started dating, getting drugged at a college party, and lying about a few more mild things like not smoking cigarettes anymore, etc. She spends the night at my apartment a few more times and I continue running her to classes in the morning when her family decides that they no longer want her in college and they're not going to continue funding her. At this point, her family is trying to bring her home and is attempting to be a lot more strict with her, and she starts moving her college belongings into my apartment. I told her that it's too soon for us to live together and she told me it's only temporary, and if I move back in with my grandmother, she's very old school and controlling and we won't see each other much if at all anymore. So we moved in together fairly quickly, before I was actually ready to. I helped her find a temporary job and have been helping her since then to continue finding better paying jobs. I always looked out for her health benefits, 401k, building her credit, etc. although this was tricky because she never wanted me to know anything about her finances. Throughout the 5 years we were together, she was struggling to live paycheck to paycheck and didn't want me to visibly see any details to give her insight or advice, which is why she managed to max out a credit card with a $1,000 limit, which I wasn't going to pay off for her as much as I would have liked to because I saw a future together for us, but I encouraged her to save to get that down to help build her credit more easily because she was in need of a car of her own. At this point, for over 4 years of this relationship I had basically driven her everywhere or loaned her my car for the day when I was working. I've got a fairly high credit limit, so I instead added her as an authorized user to my cards, kept the credit card from her, and used this to lower her ratio. Fast forward to year 3 of the relationship. The first 2 years of it we had our ups and downs, but we were happy together. We had played games together, watched TV series, traveled a lot, and just done everything together. She made me feel complete. Everything that I did in life I wanted to share the moment with her. We had met some friends in an online game that I had introduced her to. This was around when I had caught her talking to and playing games with a new friend that she had added in-game. I'd play with him from time to time, but for the most part, he wanted nothing to do with me. He was always trying to come between us and interfere with our relationship, so I had told her that I don't feel comfortable with her talking to him because he's acting as if he has a thing for her and also trying to break us up. It shouldn't have been a big deal at this point for her to cut him off since they had just met in an online video game recently, but I got that he's just a friend, you don't need to worry about it. Except secret conversations and constant flirting was making me uncomfortable. It was around this time that I'd told her that I'm beginning to get extremely tired of her being flirty with guys and constantly getting attention from sources that she doesn't need. I felt that I should have been enough to validate her and the opinion of others really shouldn't matter. I wasn't comfortable with the flirting no matter how innocent it seemed. Sometimes it was even happening in front of me. I felt as if nothing changed. I finally at this point tell her that if my needs aren't being met and my boundaries aren't being respected, that I'm done. A few months later, I finally bring myself to tell her that I'm done with it. About a week or two pass by and I find myself downloading Snapchat to start Snapchatting with a girl that I have no interest in. Things progress as you'd expect with Snapchat and I instantly regret it. I snap back into reality and tell her how much I messed up, how much she means to me and that I wanted her back. I wanted to work things out. I felt so guilty and I then cut off communication with that girl. After getting back together, the wounds and trust never quite healed, but she does understand where I was coming from and she had eventually cut him off. Another year passes by and she's gaming with her girlfriends online. She had been playing games with Sarah and her girlfriends fairly frequently. A new friend that she made in the same game. Eventually, I ask her, "You've been playing with Sarah pretty often, you guys must have really hit it off in game. Mind if I get to know your new friends?" This was when she said sure. My boyfriend says hi guys. And I say oh, I can't just say hi over the mic? And I hear a male voice in her headset, "Why can't you just tell him the truth?" It was him again. I lost all collectiveness. I go upstairs, I pack my suitcase full of clothes and other things, and I leave the house. I was probably gone for about roughly a month or so. She and I kept in touch from time to time and grew to eventually come back to one another. I reached out to him for details and as it turned out, once he knew my side of the story, he wanted nothing to do with her. Suddenly I was good enough for her again. Present day, the holidays had just passed by and by this point, I had just helped her buy a car. We have little to no making love life anymore. We're lucky if we had been intimate more than once in the months of December/January. The times we have been, she felt like she wasn't even present and she was distant the whole time. I caught her recently talking to yet a new person that I'd met in a game. This time it was a teammate that I put together for an amateur hobby league. She met him mid-January and was immediately being secretive with her conversations. She logged out of Discord every usage on her own computer, changed her phone passcode, spending unusual amounts of time on frequent visits to the bathroom, and been outright lying to me about it when asked about it. Again, instinct kicks in and I tell her that I'm breaking up with her. She continues to do things for me as if we're a couple and talk to me as if we're a couple. But nothing changes in her actions and I hit a breaking point. She's going to bed early, conveniently when he leaves our team chat after our gaming/team practice session, giving me no validation to go off of and not actively attempting to spend any time with me anymore. So recently, when she went to work for the day, I decided to move some of my important stuff out and stay with family for a while. She called me after she got off of work that night one time. Sent me a single text that said, "Where are you?" The following morning she sends me a text, "We need to talk about the bills." A couple of days later, I reach out to her about reconciling. Telling her that I love her, that I miss her, and I want us to get better for each other. She shuts me down immediately. I want out of this trauma bond. I need time. I need space. I'll always care about you and have love for you, but I'm not in love with you. Some people are just stepping stones in the other's journey and I'm glad that I was a stepping stone to something better coming your way soon. I need to work on myself. That was the last meaningful conversation that we had together that wasn't about finances or her just being short with me. She's deleted all of our photos together on social media. I've found sentimental relationship gifts to one another in the trash at our apartment. Photos, plaques with the date we started dating, a blanket with our photos custom made, etc. She's acting cold and as if she never cared about me at all during these 5 years. She blocked me on social media and just 10 days after my move out she's in a relationship with a teammate of mine who she's never met in person and lives 10 hours away. Which is weird to me, because she's not working on herself at all. She's actually seemingly going right back into the same toxic patterns that we had in our relationship. She's shaved/buzzed the side of her head and dyed her hair extremely bright colors. I'm still processing everything myself, but I'm above begging for her back or letting her know how I feel after my last attempt 2 weeks ago. Is there a hope that this can be reconciled, and if so, is there a possibility that we can both be better and healthy for each other? Is this long-distance rebound something to actually be worried about? If you've made it this far, I appreciate you reading my story more than you realize. I welcome any and all advice, feedback, anything. Thank you. Ida for not wanting a close sibling relationship? I'm looking for someone to give it to me straight here. I am 5 years older than my brother. We come from a dysfunctional family with abusive/codependent parents. Basically my mom had left my dad and for a short period of time, I felt happy and safe, but then unfortunately she accidentally got pregnant with my brother and as a result ended up going back to my dad. I was quite a solitary child and when he was born, it just added more chaos and drama to an already tense and difficult home life. Through no fault of his own, he was a needy and demanding child and no one in the house really had time for him. My dad didn't believe he was his, my mom tried her best but had minimal energy because of all the stress at home and I, well, just didn't want to know. They tried to make me bond with him and it just didn't work. I wanted to be left alone and I think on some level, I was angry with him for making the house even more dangerous and dramatic than it had been before. It was dysfunctional but before this, I had more ability to manage my parents and his birth just added to the stress and noise, which added to the reactions and abuses. My dad was incredibly unpredictable and angry over the smallest things. Again, none of this was his fault, he was just a kid doing what kids do but in an environment where ultimately he was largely unwanted. I should mention that even as an I don't have normal attachment. People have and always will be easy come, easy go to me. I can connect initially but generally can't be bothered with the effort that meaningful relationships entail. I get irritated by too much contact, too many demands on my time. I often maintain friendships, not because I feel any draw to, but because I know I'll feel guilty if I upset or hurt people. I very rarely feel any sort of impetus to reach out to people because I actually want to. I'm very self-sufficient and I just don't seem to need people in the same way as they need me. The only real exceptions are my pets, my children and to a degree, my partner. I strongly suspect that my childhood and experiences made me this way but it also does seem to be a natural tendency. I also have a very demanding job where I'm responsible for a lot of people and things and I don't think it helps with how much energy I have to give to other people. Sometimes even my kids will call me and I'll be like, you'll have to wait, I haven't got the energy for this right now. I obviously get back to them and don't tell them I think this lol. My parents and my family are in the majority now dead. I don't really grieve in the way you would expect and with the exception of my pets, I get over things very quickly. My brother has his own family and is different from me in that regard. He still seeks a family connection whereas I mostly me about the whole thing. It's not that I don't care at all, I just don't have the motivation to maintain the relationship, particularly when I'm exhausted. I'll sometimes go months without responding to messages to people and I'm 10x worse the more pressure you put on me. I have explained this to him before but he just keeps on and on, starting to contact my partner to ask why I'm ignoring him etc. I carry a lot of guilt about this as even though I should feel differently, I just don't. When we speak it's mostly fun but I do come away feeling very drained. The conversations are usually about him, what he wants, what he needs, which appears to be my approval in lieu of what my mother might have given him in the past. She was very involved, in my view over-involved in our lives. If I don't respond he gets reactive and demanding within a few weeks and I'm torn between knowing this is some sort of childhood dynamic playing out, where I can't be asked and want my peace, and he's desperate for connection and attention that I don't have it in me to give. And then I hate myself because I know I'm not normal in this regard and although I think I should be a better sister, I just don't care enough to actually be one. Wow, that's grim typing that out. Basically, I'm pretty sure I am an all over this, but it's hard to see from the inside looking out. Perhaps you guys can see something I can't about how to resolve this. He's recently blocked me because of another episode of me not responding and him just escalating and being demanding and I don't want to out energy into resolving this as I know I'll just do it again and cause more pain in what is already a difficult situation. Has anyone else experienced anything like this, or have any insight? Ada for expecting that after 14 years we should be able to have a happy partnership that does not find humor in comments like these? Have been with my now husband, for about 14 years, married for 8. The other night we were watching a show together where one of the characters used the line I was married for 18 years, happiest 2 years of my life. My husband found this extremely funny, and in particular tried to say something along the lines of that just being how marriage is. It struck me as strange I guess to find this funny while you are still in a marriage with someone. And to think that it's funny in a way that applies to your current marriage. I absolutely see the humor in it when applied to a situation where one is admitting that they tried to make things work for many years but that only 2 years of the marriage were actually happy. I guess when it was found funny in application to our own situation, it's got my wheels turning and I'm really feeling like our relationship is in a place where it's honestly not worth continuing with someone who feels this way about our current marriage. It's also not an isolated comment. There have been other comments along the lines of becoming a parent is a bad idea and not generally worth everything you go through being a parent. He tends to tell younger co-workers that they should not have kids, etc. There is a lot of trying to bargain for more time to play online games, at the expense of my time to finish my work or keep the house clean. I'm not even getting close to having any time to go do something for my own enjoyment, and he is somewhat regularly getting to do some gaming yet he is somehow always the one complaining and giving the sense that there is never enough time for his gaming and marriage and parenting basically just aren't something he would want to do over again if given a second chance because he doesn't feel the reward of marriage and parenting are worth it. I can tell that he is feeling trapped in this life instead of getting to play his online games, which I totally understand the feeling of, but I wholeheartedly feel we should both be able to rise to the challenge for this short part of our lives with young children at home, support each other, motivate each other, and be truly happy and content although exhausted. That is not to say he doesn't help, he does. He preps food for the kids, watches them frequently while I'm working, and often engages and plays with them and is a great dad. I do feel he could do better on cleaning up messes as he goes so that I don't have to do 90% of that work later, but currently trying to work on that and figure out if it is just an underlying issue like ADHD, or if we can establish a new routine that addresses it effectively, or if we have more going on there. Anyway, my point in further explaining all of this is that he is not just a checked-out parent who is hopeless about marriage and parenting. He also says that he wants to help more with keeping things cleaned up when I mention it, but things never seem to stick, and there's the extra effort of the whole you should have just asked thing, for me to even try to come up with routines and ways for him to help more. But I guess my point is that it feels like he isn't truly as invested in this relationship and life as a parent as he claims to be if he finds a comment like this one made on a show funny and applicable to our current situation, instead of seeing it as a partnership where we are both generally trying our best and are both generally overall happy. And while I can't put my or on any others right now, there have definitely also been other comments implying that marriage and having kids are more work than they are worth and that being a spouse and parent are generally making him unhappy. Also, to be fair, he does not get very much time for the online gaming and it is a thing that happens on its own schedule without much predictability, so it's just set up in a way that conflicts with the way parenting life tends to go. I do not begrudge him the chance to play. I actually have been trying to tell him for literally years at this point to just put reminders visibly on the Google Calendar and that I will try to avoid scheduling things or trying to take time for my own work when these times come around. He has finally done this for the one coming up next month, so maybe there will be some change in our tune after we get a more efficient system set up for setting aside time for him to take. But that aside, I'm still feeling the need to ask this question so that I have better bearings on where we stand if this does all continue going forward. I guess my ultimate point is, I know I need to sit down and address this with him and figure out where we need to go to resolve this attitude. I'm just not sure if there's anything left I should or can bring up and try to discuss before giving an ultimatum that issues like this are going to require therapy and that it's time to separate if he's not willing to try that. Which has of course been suggested and discussed in the past, and he's made several excuses as to why he can't talk to a therapist because he is paranoid about privacy, or doesn't need a therapist and can learn to stop thinking in these ways in some other mysterious way. Seems I will just try harder and I will just not ever say anything since everything I say is wrong are the biggest go-tos every time I try to resolve an issue. Despite the fact that I have literally slowed down and explained to him repeatedly why these are not effective solutions and not going to change anything. Woman face palming. Ida for being upset my girlfriend didn't get me anything for Valentine's Day. I, 21F, and my GF, 22F, have been together for about 9 months. Some context. We have a pretty good relationship with the exception of a difference in how to show affection for the other. I am someone who is more overly affectionate, not quite to the point of love bombing, but I do like to buy her random treats or offer to do things for her to make sure my actions match my feelings for her, whereas she is more reserved in this department. We have communicated about it, and it has made major improvements for both of us, me with feeling loved and her with not being so overwhelmed with the affection. On to the actual event. I am a student and so I do not have a ton of spare time, and when I do, I am usually at her place once she finishes work. With Valentine's Day coming up, I had to strategically plan when I could get things together for her gifts so that I could still make it to classes and get it done by the time she was done work so she wouldn't get suspicious as to why I was late. I have to take public transit as I don't have a car, so this was definitely a time-consuming process, but I wanted her to feel special and so it was worth it. The night before, there was a massive snowstorm in my city and I had yet to get her flowers, so I took a bus to a specialty flower shop, to get her favorite flowers specifically, and then when I left the shop, public transit had ceased unexpectedly due to the weather and I had to walk home. I was supposed to go to her place, but couldn't as I no longer had a way to get there and it was far too cold and long of a walk to get there on foot. Not to mention the walk home from the flower shop kinda took it out of me and I just wanted to lay in my bed to warm up. Flash forward to yesterday, Valentine's Day, and I have everything together. Flowers, chocolates, homemade card and one of those fake cold case file games as kind of a Valentine's activity we could do together, so I take the bus to her house. She comes to let me in the house and just unlocks the door and walks into the kitchen. I assume she's either busy doing something or is on the phone, etc. because she usually greets me at the door with a hug. So I walk down into the kitchen and she's just grabbing a snack. I was still confused, but shook it off and asked her where to put the flowers. In response, she makes a comment of "You're making it hard to be mad at you." I was very confused because I am a do-my sometimes but couldn't recall anything that would warrant her being mad at me. After communicating, I found out that she was mad that I hadn't come over last night even though I had planned to. I had kept her updated the whole night as I watched the bus schedule, but apparently it put a damper on her evening as she had been sick and wanted me there as a comforting presence. I explained that I had every intention of coming and that I had started my period yesterday. I get really bad periods, so that was a damper on the day as it wasn't supposed to start this early, and would have loved the comfort too, but it wasn't possible with the buses. She understands and all is well. Then I give her the rest of my gift. She cheers up and we chill and do the crime scene game. It was great, we crushed it, but I still hadn't gotten anything from her and she didn't mention anything about a potential gift. I let it go and figured I'd just wait in case there was some surprise I was ruining, but there wasn't. I guess I must have looked progressively more upset because she asked if I had expected more out of Valentine's Day. I said yes, and she recalled a conversation we had earlier in the week where we agreed to do our Valentine's date on the weekend. I had assumed it was just the date part and that it was so we both were more free from our work/school duties. She had apparently wanted to wait for the entire holiday so she had more money to get me things. It was a miscommunication and so I forgave her, but the money comment stuck with me. She went to the gas station that night while I was with her and I saw about $100 cash in her wallet. Plus I know she's spent at least that much on gambling since her last paycheck. I know she intends to get me stuff for the weekend, but I had made it very clear to her how important Valentine's Day was for me. I have a bad history with the holiday, and how I wanted it to be special. Total, I spent under $35 for my stuff for her. I didn't need her to spend a lot, I just wanted her to show some effort and I wanted to feel appreciated. Even if it was some cheap grocery store flowers, I would have been thrilled. I just wanted it to feel special. So maybe I am the a-hole. It was a miscommunication and maybe she felt pressured to save more to go all out where she knows this means a lot to me. Also, I had already had a bad day, period, walking through the snow for flowers, her being mad at me, so I'm not sure if I'm just overreacting because I was already in a subpar mood. Any advice would be greatly appreciated. I just don't know how to feel about this whole thing and kind of feel like the special feeling is gone now and worry it's going to put a damper on our actual date tomorrow night. Am I the a-hole for being upset?